Hi, okay, so the activity that I chose to do my mini teach over is activity 18.6 estimation scavenger hunt. So what this is more or less the teacher would assign units of measurement and then ask students to pair up and find objects or situations that fit the units of measurement that she had given. So, for example, a teacher might say 30 seconds. And then the students would have to find a situation that represents 30 seconds. So they might estimate that um, walking out to the playground takes 30 seconds. So they'd write that down. Then they'd time how long it actually took. Well, it took 47 seconds, so they can't use that. Maybe they think that running down the basketball court, the fastest person in their class can do that 3 times in 30 seconds. Well, they did that and it only took 12 seconds. So, anyway, they would do that until they find something that actually represents 30 seconds. We could do this with, it would be done with time, length, and weight. Um, and since it would be done over all three of those things, this would need to be a bit of a thematic unit. It would probably take about a week. The goal here is conversion, really, because these things, units of measurement and even money conversion, are all taught in second grade. So a student would learn what an inch is or um, what a minute is in second grade, and this is going to be a fourth grade activity. So, and there is actually a fourth grade objective that and standard that I'm going to use in order to fulfill this activity. But the idea here is now that you're in fourth grade and you're familiar with inches, how many inches are in a foot, or how many seconds are in an hour, or how many, what am I missing? I said, oh, okay, so how many ounces are in a pound? That's the idea here. So we would take a few days to learn these things and go over them and represent them. And it would be a really fun lesson where there's a lot of involvement and activity. This can't be a strict lecturing lesson because the students actually need to see and visualize and feel and experience what these measurements look like. Um, and so, anyway, with all of that being said, the standard is 4.MD.1. No relative sizes of measurement units within one system of units. So that would be the standard system, um, metric system. We could teach, I'd probably do that a different week because, of course, students need to know the metric system. It's used in pretty much everything other than it's used everywhere other than America, and they're going to be using it a lot in science class. If they take a home ec class, they're going to be using it in sewing, so they need a no metric system. But either way, most of their math problems are probably going to be in the standard system in grade school anyway, so that's what I would be teaching over. Within a single system of measurements, express measurements in a larger unit in terms of a smaller unit. Record measurement units in a two-column table. So I'll kind of show how I'm going to achieve that standard. Um, and so the assessments that I would use, that I would implement into the lesson, I would have an interest survey of when can I use, that would be the title of it. And it would just be a really quick little fill in the blank, tell me what you know type of survey I'd pass out to each student. I don't want it to take up a lot of time. I don't want it to be like homework. I just want it to be a couple of quick questions because students will feel more motivated if they can relate what they're learning to their own lives. So they might be thinking, well, why do I need to know inches or why do I need to know ounces? So I would just do um, a little survey where I would put when can I use, and then I'd put inches, feet, yards, seconds, minute, hours, and then ounces and pounds. And I'd see if they could just fill in when they think that those things could actually come into play in their real lives outside of school. And then As for a pre-assessment, I would do a little bit of I like to integrate clickers because students love them. They're really easy for the teacher to use. I get immediate feedback. I don't have to take time grading things, and students can hit next, 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 and I can see as they're filling in the questions with their answers, I can see what everyone's getting and I can get feedback from my class immediately on the spot. So I would do a little bit of a clicker pre assessment just to see if students knew the answers to some measurement questions, such as how many ounces are in a pound, or 30 seconds equals how many minutes, things like that. So it'd just be really quick. Again, I wouldn't want it to be exasperating for them. It'd just be, what do you know? And then as for my formative, that would be the activity 18.6. I'd let them do that with partners. It's a scavenger hunt, so I'd have a bunch of measurements ready for them, and they would go out and find those things with a partner. And then as for the post test, which would probably also need to have its own um, objective. I wrote the objective over my formative assessment here because that is the one that I'm going to be giving the lesson over today. But eventually, I would have a post test that could implement writing, which I'm going to show what it would look like. I have a little document of how math and writing could be integrated in order to do a post test on this unit. And then I also think that engineering could be implemented if I wanted to ask students to represent these units of measurement with things that they have found. So I might say, using materials in your desk, create a structure that weighs 1.5 pounds, or things like that. So you could integrate science and engineering in that way. So, anyway, the theories that I would integrate is Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. So, just trying to have different activities so that all student needs are met. So I would lecture, I would play videos, I would have activities, I would have hands on, hands off, I would have partner, I'd have individual. I just, all of these implemented into one lesson so that everybody feels like they're being included and being talked to directly. Um, Let's see, and I would teach them to have a growth mindset. So, anyway, the objective here would be, given that the students have listened to and participated in a lecture on measurements, students will work with partners to find and identify objects that represent teacher appointed weights, times, and lengths, demonstrating mastery by giving at least 15 out of 20 correct examples. So, again, I would have create 20 examples and then ask the students to go out and find these things and tell me how they came to um, that answer. Like if I said find something that's 4 inches, and maybe they used a notebook at first, and then this notebook is really 12 inches. They put notebook 12 inches, and then maybe they'd say wallet 8 inches, and then they'd find pencil 4 inches. So anyway, I just want to see how they represented these things. And anyway, they would need to have at least 15 out of 20, which would be a 75% correct, to show me that they have mastered these concepts. And this would just be formative. I would just be grading this to see how well I'm doing teaching and how well the student is doing. The students are doing comprehending what I'm teaching, and if we need another day or two of instruction before having any kind of summative assessment. So, with that being said, some things that the students would should have prior knowledge of would be conversion of money, because this will help them be able to relate it to conversion of like ounces to pounds, or minutes to hours, things like that, is I can say, because they learned this in second grade, well, you know how 4 quarters equals $1. In that same way, um, we can say that 12 inches equals 1 foot. And then students should also know the rules of discussion so that they can participate nicely with their peers when they're working together on fulfilling that objective for the formative assessment, and then also working nicely with me and again their peers during discussions during the lecture part of the lesson. And then students should have experience working with each unit. They should already be familiar with inches, feet, ounces, pounds. What am I missing? Seconds, hours, minutes. They just might not know how they all relate to one another. And then some strategies that I would use for classroom management. I'm a big fan of the Give 'em 5. I've used it, it works super well. I'd say clap once if you can hear me, clap twice if you can hear me, so on and so forth. I'd let the students work with partners. And then I'd have formative testing, which I think is really important to not take grades on homework. The students are learning these ideas, they don't need to be graded on that until the assessment. Um, so, anyway, I think that more or less covers what I needed to cover. As an introduction, I would just say we're going to be working with some things that you have already been associated with, such as, and things that you will use every single day, um, such as time, measurement, and weight. And you might not realize how often you actually use these until we start doing a little bit of studying. And then I think you'll come to find that these are actually great pieces of information to know a lot about, just something like that. And then I'd say we're just going to do a little bit of an interest survey so I can see how everybody is feeling or thinks they're feeling about measurement. And then we'll do a little clicker activity. And so then I'd go into doing the lesson. I'd have um, each day, I'd do, time one day, weight another, and length another, and then we'd have like a formative lesson day, and then maybe if the students did well, we'd have a summative lesson the next day, but or I'm sorry, summative assessment the next day. But if they're not doing well, we'd add a few more days of teaching and move that summative assessment to another time. But there'd be lots of demonstrations and there'd be lots of volunteers, and I'd have scales that the students can use and that I would use to show weight. I'd have rulers, I'd have yardsticks, um, I'd have timers. So we just have a lot of materials, and so the material list would be a little bit long for this here unit. And then I would conclude by saying I'm going to look over your activities and see how well everybody is doing with measurement, and depending on the scores that I find that I calculate on those, I'll see if we need to do a few more days of practicing or if you're ready to go ahead and tackle a new concept in math class. So, thank you for listening and being great students and working fairly with your partners. And meanwhile, outside of math class, try to keep track of all the real life ways that you can use these things that you've learned today. So, I just want to show what the summative assessment would look like. And again, like I said, I'd have another objective for that because the objective that I wrote covered the formative activity 18.6. But as a post assessment that I would actually take for a grade, it would look something similar to this. The directions here say fill in each table with the correct conversion, write a story problem to help describe that situation. Um, Example, if Andy was at the store for 30 minutes, how many seconds was he there? So the student would look here and say 32 ounces, and they would convert that to pounds, and then they'd write a little situation that could go with that. So Andrea had 32 ounces of candy, but the candy was sold in pounds. So she needs, how can she figure how many pounds of candy she has? You just write a little story problem to go with that. So I know that the professor hates worksheets, so that's why I would have so many other activities leading up to this. And then on this assessment, I don't even think it's really necessarily a traditional worksheet because I am trying to integrate writing, and that's the only reason I would really even have a worksheet. If I wanted to integrate engineering instead, I think that would be cool too. I'd have to form something a little bit different. This is if I went the writing route. Um, Engineering, I'd actually have students construct and represent what's on these tables here. So I think that about concludes it. Of course, I would have modifications for um, enrichment, reteaching, students that are meet idea accommodations, and then also for ELL students. And I just haven't included those today because this isn't actually a lesson plan that I've developed. It's just something I have ideas on. So thank you for listening, and that is it.